Thank you, James, and good morning, everyone. As we know, safety has been a key aspect of maintaining our quality of life. We know that it's also one of the things that people value most who live here. So in our consultation on policing, over 80% of people said that they felt safe or very safe here. And as set out in the Chief Constable's annual report for 24-25, our island retains a low crime severity score. That's a rating that is used to measure the level of harm of offences. And our rating has actually improved from last year and remains significantly lower than the UK's latest rating. In addition, the Chief Constable reported an overall reduction in recorded crime by 10% and an increase in detection rates to 56%. And these are also significant measures of success and demonstrate a positive overall trend. As Minister, I am committed to protecting that sense of safety that we all enjoy and to ensure that we remain one of the safest places in the British Isles. However, we are not immune to the threats and changes affecting others, and so ensuring we maintain our safety and security in the face of evolving threats is a strategic priority and remains one for the final year of this island plan. So, at last year's conference, I was pleased to share the newly launched Securing Our Island strategy. And that was a direct response to the evolving nature of threat from serious and organised crime. As I outlined last year, as a result of the work of law enforcement bodies to understand the changing nature of threat and risk, it was recognised that we should embed a comprehensive and sustained approach to maintaining security at our entry points. The Securing Our Island strategy set out the principles, aims and actions to achieve this. And I want to take the opportunity today to update on the work that has happened since then and the further work planned going forward as we maintain a focus on our security. Before I provide that update, I did want to just remind everyone about the cross-agency nature of the work involved in delivering this strategy. So, in the Isle of Man, within our structure, the Isle of Man Constabulary comes under the remit of Home Affairs, while Customs and Immigration are co-located within Treasury. And the position under our legal framework is that each agency has a slightly different role and slightly different powers. So, for example, the police have certain powers to stop and search people and vehicles, while Customs have powers to search goods, which include post and freight, and immigration have certain powers regarding immigration offences. And I think it's important to note that while the agencies already did collaborate, part of what we have been developing through the Securing Our Island strategy is enhancement of their capability and capacity for collaboration through intelligence sharing and operational effectiveness. So in updating you today, I'll talk about how we have been enabling that over the last year and what further work we will be progressing. I think it's important to say that the Council of Ministers set some policy principles to underpin the strategy, and you can see them there on the slide. The critical issues that we wanted to address are comprehensive security measures, efficient, fair and proportionate entry processes, compliance with international standards, and importantly, an adaptive and resilient approach. And I would say our experience as we have gone on has underlined the importance of that adaptive and resilient approach. The nature of threat and harm does continue to evolve. Then, within the strategy, we had three strategic aims, those of prevent, pursue, and protect. And so as I update now, I will talk about the objectives that we set within each of those strategic aims and the actions that we set out to achieve, along with an update on progress. So the first strategic aim of prevent, you'll see there on the slide the objectives that this strategic aim set out to achieve, namely providing law enforcement agencies with the tools and information needed to reduce opportunity for exploitation of our systems, updating our legislation systems and processes, and continued collaboration with UK and Common Travel Area law enforcement agencies. And so we list here the actions that we set out last year and also a progress update on the work that we have been undertaking. And I think the important things that I would like to highlight is, first of all, around information sharing, which is a crucial underpinning aspect of how we can become better at maintaining our security. What we understand is that even within our current legislative framework, it is possible for our different agencies involved in protecting the security of the island to share information on a targeted basis. But we have undertaken a gap analysis over the course of the year, and as a result of that, we recognise that there is scope to provide a more frequent and automated approach to information sharing. And so work that is underway includes data sharing agreements which will allow for the more transfer of information between the police and immigration. And as the Chief Constable reported in his 24-25 annual report, a specific data sharing agreement between the police and customs. It's important to say that we have had a very successful collaborative relationship between the police on island and agencies in the Northwest, namely the Northwest Regional Organised Crime Group, but also the National Crime Agency. That successful working relationship has continued and is an important part of what contributes to an intelligence-led approach to supporting our security. Knowing who is travelling here is a key aspect of better security. The collection, review and assessment of passenger manifest data by the police on a proportionate basis has been improved over the last year with a more automated process in development. And without wishing to steal the thunder of my political colleague, Minister Ashford, who will be presenting next on migration, I did want to highlight that as part of the Securing Our Island strategy, steps have been taken to strengthen our immigration processes and close pathways that have been vulnerable to exploitation. I also want to update today that at the moment we are undertaking a very focused review to look at what else we can do to further improve the security and compliance regime associated with inward migration to the island. That's the aim here, obviously, is to balance supporting appropriate and legitimate migration while deterring and detecting any illegality. A final area of action relates to aviation, and whilst over the last year we have focused more on arrivals at our seaport and domestic airlines, we recognise there is scope to do more regarding private aviation, and customs are looking at introducing UK systems regarding registration of general aviation and tracking of movements. Similarly, with our territorial waters, that has not been so much of a focus of priority, but we are able to still respond to matters in that space on an intelligence-led basis. So the second strategic aim of Protect, and the objectives we set ourselves are on the slide again. You will see that the objectives we set were to provide a physical presence at air and seaports to detect criminals, illicit goods and immigration crime, to improve our use of technology to keep our borders safe and verify identity, and to provide support for children and vulnerable adults who are victims of exploitation. And in terms of an update on the actions we set out and the progress we have made, critically, we have made progress on improved use of technology over the last year. So in April this year, we put in place a legislative basis for using automatic number plate recognition at our port. And implementation of this technology has begun and has contributed to the detection of vehicles used for criminal purposes, including the largest Class A drugs seizure. Primary legislation is needed in order to be able to deploy automatic facial recognition technology. And so work continues on a draft bill that will be subject to consultation before being introduced to the branches of Tynwald for consideration. It is our aim at the moment to try and get that consultation out before the end of the year with a view to progressing the bill in 2026. A further significant change that we managed to deliver in the year just gone was the transfer of ports policing officers to the Isle of Man Constabulary, and that was completed in February. Importantly, this has enabled closer collaboration and a more resilient and flexible approach to security. And it is a key contributor to one of our aims of maintaining a physical presence at the port. An intelligence-led approach continues in relation to monitoring arrivals and departures at smaller ports, and there has been enhanced focus on scanning inbound and outbound post for illicit goods. Operations over the last year have resulted in significant seizures of cash and drugs, demonstrating the impact of these efforts. One of the things that we identified as a significant challenge to the ability to detect criminals' movements was the fact that it was possible to book onto the Steam packet using cash and a false name. Earlier this year, the Steam packet removed cash payments for tickets. Work continues with the Isle of Man Steam packet to develop an efficient way to verify passenger identity. And as the Chief Minister referenced in his opening address yesterday, as a step before that, there are discussions taking place about the potential to introduce a requirement to carry identification when travelling through our seaport. Discussions on this will take into account our security and other obligations within the Common Travel Area rules. Finally, we identified the importance of maintaining a law enforcement presence at the main air and sea arrivals. And I'm sure audience members may be aware that a dog team has been in operation since last year, screening arrivals and departures at the sea terminal and at the airport, alongside dedicated customs officials. I mentioned earlier the integration of ports policing, and both of these things really have made a difference to our ability to maintain a visible and consistent law enforcement presence. So our final strategic aim, that of pursue, sets out the objectives we set, namely the maintenance of robust enforcement through criminal sanctions that punish offenders and disrupt criminal activity. In terms of the actions we set and our progress update, enforcement has remained a key aspect of our overall strategy. Our joint operations with UK law enforcement agencies have led to substantial success. And this, combined with enhanced security arrangements at our ports, has resulted in more than 60 separate significant seizures of illicit goods and money suspected to be the proceeds of crime at the island's ports of entry in the financial year 2024-25. In connection with the pursuit of those who might commit immigration crime and human trafficking, we have undertaken a review with the Cabinet Office on the optimal route for ensuring robust modern slavery legislation, noting that the UK legislation is currently under review. The reason we have an eye on the UK legislation is that we have the ability to apply some of that legislation in the Isle of Man should we think it appropriate. However, further work on considering whether to apply any of that legislation is on hold pending an ongoing review in the UK, but we have assured ourselves that our current legislative framework does seem to be sufficient to address matters that we have so far identified. Finally, as a result of the increased activity and success of our law enforcement agencies, there have been substantial seizures. And going forward, we will continue to utilise our proceeds of crime legislation to seize cash, property and assets from criminals. The Isle of Man does face, as I've said, a range of threats from criminals who seek to exploit our open borders and our position within the Common Travel Area. The work done to date and intelligence available to our law enforcement bodies has shown the changing nature of that threat and risk and has led to the strategic prioritisation of work to address it. Work that involves a proactive and coordinated approach. Over the last year, we have delivered on a number of the actions under the Securing Our Island strategy with significant impact in terms of enhanced collaboration and information sharing across law enforcement agencies, increased law enforcement presence and activity, improved use of technology, and increased detection and disruption of serious and organised crime. This summer, we have taken the opportunity to review the strategy and to identify the next key actions. And the main actions I've summarised there on the slide. Critically, we want to progress legislation to underpin the capability to use automated facial recognition technology. I've also mentioned that we will have ongoing productive discussions with the Isle of Man Steam Packet around the introduction of verified identification. And I think importantly, there may well be an opportunity ahead of that to look at whether we can require people to travel, to carry identification when travelling as an interim step. We are going to continue to further strengthen our enforcement and compliance teams. And I think an important part of this is a further review of our current immigration compliance levels. I referenced earlier on the work that had already taken place to strengthen our immigration processes and close pathways that have been vulnerable to exploitation. A key action now is a focused review to identify how we can further improve our security and compliance regime so that we can continue to enable appropriate and legitimate migration whilst deterring and detecting any exploitation or illegality. Before I close, I thought it might be interesting to give you a flavour of what else Home Affairs has been doing over the last year. The slide contains some of the highlights and just a few words about some of the very important ones. One of the most important things we've done over the last year is complete on the building of our new Sexual Assault Referral Centre, which provides state-of-the-art facilities to look after victims of the most horrendous types of assault and criminality. The Sexual Assault Referral Centre has been delivered on time and in budget. It has been handed over now to Manx Care to go through its commissioning phase, which is very important given the high standards of forensic capability that are required in this facility. And I hope if that commissioning all goes well, the new facility will become fully operational before the end of the year. There has been a lot of activity in the sphere of legislation as well. So I've touched in my presentation on the work that attaches specifically to the Securing Our Island strategy. But in addition to this, we have also done work to bring forth the island's first extradition legislation, and that has had its first reading in the House of Keys. We are working on modernising our fire legislation, which is several decades old now and in need of modernisation. We have also just yesterday on Monday, launched a consultation into our Justice Reform Amendment Bill and Contempt of Court Bill, both significant pieces of legislation in relation to our criminal justice system. And I've highlighted on the slide there the National Infrastructure Security Bill. I think audience members will be well aware of the risks that are posed in a world that's increasingly vulnerable to cyber threat, particularly when it comes to our critical national infrastructure. And so a lot of work has been going on in order to create our standards and protections appropriate for our critical national infrastructure on the island. We have introduced a new tool for the police for investigating child abuse, which not only should allow us to bring forward cases more rapidly for prosecution, but also supports those officers who do that very, very difficult work in not having to view some of the horrendous images that are involved in investigating such crimes. We've also updated our electronic tagging legislation in order that we can use tagging as part of our management of not only offenders when they are released from prison, but also as part of facilitating court bail. We also issued earlier this year the National Risk Appetite on iGaming. And finally, there was approval in November 2024 by Tynwald for some policy principles to reduce the harms of illegal drugs. And I've talked a lot about the criminal aspects of illegal drugs and the threat of serious and organised crime, but we recognise the harms from this type of criminality extend beyond that. And so those policy principles look more broadly at what we do overall to reduce the harms to our community from the use and importation of drugs. I hope that's been a helpful update for everyone, and I'm very much looking forward to the panel discussion that's upcoming. But before that, I would like to hand over to my ministerial colleague, David Ashford, who is going to provide an update on migration policy. Thank you very much.